Welcome to the Phil Steele Plus Tour for November the 12th, 2021. Only 3 full weeks of football to go and then the conference championship games. My, how the season flies. I'd like to take a quick moment. If you're a veteran out there, I know yesterday was Veterans Day, today is not, but I do want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your service to this country. Appreciate any and all veterans for serving for the country. Also, this week, I didn't do as deep a dive into the FCS. I've got a lot of stuff going on this week. I do have plenty of in-depth stuff on here, but this week, I'm actually voting on the Joe Moore Award, the Football Writers All-American Team, the Outland Award, the Nagurski Award, the Bolitnikoff Award, the Jim Thorpe Award, and the Paul Horning Award. And I'm on the Interior Committee for many of these awards, and some of those committee calls take 2 hours. And there's, of course, 62 games to follow this week and 66 games next week to prepare for. So I am wall-to-wall football this week, and definitely proud to be a member of each of those awards and a voting member and in the committees for many of those awards as well. So now let's take a look at this week. We're going to start off with a game that used to be the game in college football. Miami of Florida, Florida State, one of the top rivalry games many years ago. Hasn't lived up to that recently. Now, I want to show you the purpose of the Phil Steele Plus Tour is to show you how to use the Phil Steele Plus site and all the different things that are available. And one of the things available, when you click on the opponent and down here where this is colored, you get the last 24 years matchups. Now, pretty soon that'll be the last 25 years matchups, but of course now it's 24. And we'll start there. The history in this series says take Miami. Why? Well, now, this column here, if I've explained to you in the past, if it's green, that means they won the game straight up. If it's red, they lost the game straight up. This is the score of the game, but you don't have to go down with your eye and try to figure out wins and losses. There it is, 4 straight wins for Miami in the series, 3-1 ATS. That's good. Not great, but this is the great part over here. Look at this. How does the visitor do? Now, let me explain this to you. If the word win is there, that means that the home team won the game straight up. So the home team has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wins straight up in the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 years. So the home team's 5 and 10 straight up. And then you count the colors. The colors means they covered. So we could see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 3 against the spread for the visitor in this series. Miami of Florida is the visitor. They've won 4 in a row. And look at this. Last year, they won that game 52-10. In fact, they scored on their first 5 possessions of the game. Remember, you can come over here and get the score. You can come over here and get the box score of the game. And once again, the box scores, I want to thank collegepressbox.com. They do a great job of providing those for us. I appreciate that very much. Tremendous website. Thank you, Ted Ganji, for doing that website. And he allows me to post the box scores for the game. As you could tell, if you go to this goes you the drive-by drive, you can see they scored Miami down here. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. They fumbled, touchdown, touchdown, field goal. They just dominated the game, and then they sort of took their foot off the gas maybe at the end of the game. But it was a 52-10 rout last year, so you got to like that. The visitor in the series has done well, and Miami is better than their record. Let's go back to the box scores again. If you take a look at this Virginia game, I know many of you watched it, but if you didn't, just to show you, at the end of the game, well, we could show you up here at the end of the game. Well, I'll go down to the end of it. This goes to the play-by-play. I do go through the play-by-play of every single game every week. And as you see at the end of the game, Miami lines up for a 33-yard field goal. They're down 2 points. So if they make the field goal, it's a win. He misses a chip shot, 33-yard field goal, and Miami gets a loss. The next week they play North Carolina. And what happened in this game is Manny Diaz was under a lot of pressure for settling for a field goal, not maybe going for the touchdown on that one. So after that, he comes down here in the North Carolina game. Now, keep in mind, this is at North Carolina, so they're a large underdog. They're covering. They're going to cover the game. But here they've got a great shot at winning it. Miami gets down to the 16-yard line of North Carolina. It's 3rd and 4. He could take a field goal and force overtime, but he's got to go for it, right? Pass is tipped at the line of scrimmage, broken up and intercepted, and North Carolina hangs on. So they could easily have won those 2 games, basically one play away from winning both. and be 7-2 right now. But instead, they're 5-4. The thing I like is after those two games, they beat NC State as a dog at home. They beat Pitt. You watched Pitt last night. They're a pretty good team. They're probably going to win their division in the ACC, probably get to the ACC title game, and a great chance of winning it. But Miami beat them on the road. They played North Carolina on the road. They beat Georgia Tech, so they're a pretty good team. Now, with Florida State, I like this. They started out 0-4, but then they did win 3 games. And they also did go into North Carolina and come out with the win. But their last 2 games, only 241 yards and 271 yards offense. A total of 15 first downs per game. So their offense is struggling. Which team has the better defense here? It's Miami. Miami's holding opponents to 42 yards per game below their season average. And what this column does out here, it takes every game except, let's say this one here, Miami and Virginia. Every game except for the Miami-Virginia game. What does Virginia average in all their other games except the Miami game? And what did they get against Miami? So Miami held Virginia, and it looks funny here, doesn't it? They held them to 449 yards, but that was actually 108 yards below their season average. And every game other than Miami, they're averaging 557 yards per game. Miami held them. Now, this number here tells you what they held them to for the season. Number 1 means season low, second season low. So they've got the edge defensively. Florida State's got a decent defense, holding opponents to 19 below the season average, but Miami's got the better defense. And what I really like here is this dude, Tyler Van Dyke. Remember he made those statements but prior to the NC State game? Hey, we put 40 on them last year. They've got the same personnel. Yeah, they're the top defense in the ACC, but we're going to score on them. Look at this, 25 of 33, 325, 4 touchdowns. Goes into Pitt, puts up 426, 389 against Georgia Tech. And the Georgia Tech game last week, a bit of a misleading final. If you look at the yards, they had a 563 to 329 yard edge in the game. So they dominated the game. There was this 71-yard run here by Georgia Tech, and then I believe there's a turnover that led to this touchdown. All of a sudden, it's a 14-14 ball game. Miami really controlled that game, 24-15 first down edge, sort of a misleading final. So you've got a lot of good things going for you. Also, the fact that Miami's taken on the number 28 schedule, including Alabama, and they're plus 49 yards per game. Florida State's only taken on the number 57 schedule, and yet they're only minus 10 yards per game. So better team overall, better defense. I love what Tyler Van Dyke's doing at quarterback. Give him a big edge there. Offensive edge goes to them as well. So add it all up, we got a lot of fine features here. The visitor does well in the series. They're only laying 2.5. I'm going to take Miami minus 2.5 over Florida State in what used to be one of the biggest games of the week. All right, next up, we're going to look at my red-green game of the week. And you guys know I love these matchups where one team's got nothing but red and the other team's got nothing but green. And you know doggone well that's a tremendous matchup for you. Well, Oregon State's at home this week, and they are playing Stanford. Now, I'm a line of scrimmage guy. If you can dominate the line of scrimmage both offensively and defensively, you're going to win the majority of your football games. Let's take a look at this here. Stanford's rush defense is all red. Now, what does the red mean? I believe it's over 200 yards you allow rushing turns this into red. Look at all that red. In fact, on the season, they're giving up 232 yards per game rushing, 5.6 yards per carry. Look at the green here. Oregon State's one of the best run teams in the Pac-12. 230 yards per game rushing, 5.6 yards per carry. Those numbers look pretty familiar, or pretty similar, I should say. You got to think that Oregon State's going to get at least 230 yards rushing and 5.6 yards per carry. Now, this tells you they may get more in the fact that they're actually averaging 73 yards more than their opponents normally allow, and Stanford gives up 31 yards less than what their opponents, or more than what their opponents normally gain. So if you come in averaging 400 yards per game, Stanford's going to give you 431. If you come in allowing 400 yards per game, Oregon State's going to put up 473. That's what those numbers mean. I find them invaluable as well. Then can Stanford run the ball? No, they can't run the ball. Look at all this red here. And Oregon State had a really good run defense. They ran into California and Colorado the last 2 weeks, but I think we will see that improve. And then your final factor, Tanner McKee, likely out for Stanford this week. See, McKee missed last week. Jack West was the quarterback, and there maybe even be down to a freshman quarterback this week. Meanwhile, Oregon State, first of all, that loss at Purdue doesn't look so bad right now, does it? Purdue's looking pretty good. And then what they did, if you look under individual player stats, And these are invaluable, and they're updated every week. You can see Sam Neuer started the opener. Chance Nolan did the second half. And then it's been Chance Nolan ever since then, and they've had a much better offense ever since then. And use these. If you're a fantasy football player, use these. But just, you could see B.J. Baylor, how many 100-yard games he had. He had 152 against Utah, 145. You really get to know a team when you use your individual player stats. One other thing that's on here, and I'll just point it out real quick, is the last 25 years or 45 years results. And they're all updated. You can go back here and see who the head coach was all the way back to 1988 and see the records for the teams. You could see how they ran the ball each year, passed the ball. And these are invaluable here. If you ever have one of those questions, hey, have they ever been a 28-point favorite? You can go all the way back to 1976 and get every single line on every game for college football. And then here we added halftimes right here. You could see the totals we added this year in the 2000. This year we added the totals 2003. They didn't even have totals in college football in 1996. They started putting them out in 1999. Had a couple totals on the games. When they put them on every game, that's when we captured them here in 2003. And then the halftimes were a great thing that we came up with in 2004. And that really gets you to see how the game was played. Right here's your halftime of each game that was played since 2004. And, of course, this year and down here, you get the halftimes of every game right here, and I find those invaluable. But I said it's a red-green game. You've got for Oregon State, or Stanford allows the 232. Oregon State gets that. There's no Tanner McKee. And look at last week for Stanford. They lost the game 52-7. That's bad, right? Look at the halftime. They were down 38-0 at the half and outgained 440-28. 440-28, folks. That's domination. And then, of course, Utah took their foot off the gas. Only 14-7 in the second half. But you got to think Oregon State will be able to take advantage of this Stanford team that just can't stop the run. And over the last 4 weeks, here's the last 4 weeks down here. This column, I find this invaluable. Really tells you how the team's been playing recently. Stanford is minus 156 yards per game, giving up 256 yards per game, 6.1 yards per carry. Oregon State, they've got 5 wins. They've got Arizona State and Oregon on deck. There'll be a dog for both those games. If they beat Stanford, they get to a bowl game. Are they going to be motivated? I say yes. So you have a team that's highly motivated with the red-green. It is my red-green game of the week. Take Oregon State minus 12.5 over Stanford. All right, here's one that you and your friends have been talking about by the water cooler all week long. I'm sure you have. It is the huge matchup of Arkansas State against UL Monroe. And I got to tell you, Terry Bowden done wonders this year. Expectations for ULM, look what they did last year. Didn't win a game, lost a lot of their team. He is Mr. Magician when it comes to the transfer portal. He also brought in Rich Rodriguez to be his offensive coordinator. And this is amazing. I mean, they have pulled massive upsets. And here's something else I want to show you. When you go to the homepage, it's something that Todd added last week, as you recall, and I really like these because I used to have to print off the logs and then, scramble around and find the papers. Now I just go right here, College ATS logs. And if you go to the College ATS logs, this is every game for this year and the logs on every game. These are what you're going to see in the bottom of the magazine at the end of the year. But let's look at ULM and what they've done. And I say magician. Look at this. Troy, a 23.5-point underdog, win outright. Okay, that's a fluke. That's just something that, all right, it happened once. It's never going to happen again, right? Liberty, a 33-point dog, win outright, 31-28. South Alabama, a 13.5-point dog, win outright, 41-31. Who does that? And even here, look at this App State game. They were plus 27, and they lost the game by 31. But at the end of the game, UL Monroe was at the goal line, and the running back looks like he's going to score, fumbles right as he's crossing the goal line into the end zone for a touchback. So use your logs. They're right here. Just go to FBS Info, College ATS logs. That's where they are. You want to get to the team pages, you just click on team pages right there, and that's how you get to them. So ULM is actually so much better than anybody thought they would. Meanwhile, Arkansas State's been a perennial bowl team, right? They have struggled. And look at this red. You cannot find a defense here. They are allowing opponents 172 yards per game above their season average. So in this case, UL Monroe averages 326 yards per game. Add 172 to that. That is 509 yards offense. Or no, 499 yards offense that they should get in this game. That's how bad this defense is for Arkansas State. Look at their rush defense. In the last 4 weeks, they're giving up 289 yards per game on the ground, 6.7 yards per carry. Wow. They cannot stop the run. ULM does have a couple of good running backs, Andrew Harry and Chandler Rogers. Well, Chandler Rogers is their quarterback, naturally. But Rogers can run the football, and Andrew Henry's starting to come on. He had 108 here against Troy. He's had some good games this season. I love what Chandler Rogers is doing to this offense. So he has been dynamic at the quarterback position. So they do have an offense that can take advantage of this huge red defense. Now, Arkansas State, well, they can't run the ball right here. And here is a reason why in the last 4 weeks that Arkansas State is so bad. In fact, this is my last 4 weeks game of the week. In the last 4 weeks, Arkansas State has been outgained by 252 yards per game. They are playing to an average game grade of 76.2. And I know I explain it to you every week, but the average game grade has nothing to do with Arkansas State. It only has to do with their opponent and the yards rushing, yards passing, defensive rushing, defensive passing, and, of course, the score of the game. All that's very important into an average game grade. They're playing to a level of 76.2. Meanwhile, ULM is playing to a level of 92.9. 92.9. They are minus 2 yards per game, but they played App State. They played Liberty. They upset South Alabama, and they lost to Texas State last week. But the average game grade says 92.9 to 76. Now, what's the line on this game? ULM is minus 3. The last 4 weeks says ULM should win this game by 19.5 points. And if you're wondering why Arkansas State has been so poor the last 4 weeks, let's go to the individual player stats. They had a Florida State transfer in James Blackman, and he began the year. You see, look at the numbers he was putting up here. Pretty good numbers. 321 against Tulsa, 292 against Georgia Southern. He got injured here against Coastal Carolina. Now, Lane Hatcher split the quarterback duties last year, and he can throw the football. But last year, when they played, I felt the better quarterback was actually Logan Bonner. Logan Bonner's lighting it up for Utah State this year. But it worked. Their alternating quarterbacks worked last year. But Bonner now, or Hatcher here, is the main starter, only hitting 55% with a 14-9 ratio. Blackman was hitting 59%. And so I think that's one of the keys to how they performed the last 4 weeks. And one of the reasons that if you just look at the last 4 weeks, ULM should be a 19.5-point favorite, and they're only laying 3. It's a game you're going to watch. I'm sure everybody's going to be watching. Take ULM minus 3 over Arkansas State. Let's move on to our next one, and it's Virginia Tech against Duke. And a couple things I want to point out to you in this game. Virginia Tech is the home team. I always put the home team on the right. You guys know that. And I put the visitor on the left. Here's the visitor on the left for Duke. All right, so let's take a look at this matchup. Now, excuse me. First of all, to me, this is a legitimate revenge game. If you are the head coach, Justin Fuente of Virginia Tech, you've got 2 factors going for you. First of all, you have lost your last 3 home games. You are under fire. Right now, your team is 4-5, and you could preach to your team. You know how enter Sandman. Remember they upset North Carolina in the opener here at home? They opened up 3-0 at home, but they've actually lost their last 3 games at home. So you've got a team that's lost their last 3 games. The other revenge part is this. Let's go back to the last time Duke traveled here. Duke came into their place, and they beat them 45-10. It was the worst home loss for Virginia Tech since 1974. 1974. So can you get your team motivated for this game? Can you get them not to look past Duke? I'm saying, yeah. You need a win to get to a bowl, potentially. You're off 3 straight home losses. You need to reestablish the home edge. And this team kicked your butt the last time they came in here. You're not going to allow them to come in here and kick your butt again. All right, let's see what Duke does on the road this year. They lost to Wake Forest 45-7. They lost to Virginia 48-0. They lost to North Carolina 38-7. So in their 3 ACC road games this year, their average loss is 44-5, and they are minus 236 yards per game. Now, is Virginia Tech as bad as their record? Well, let's go back and look at that Notre Dame game. Notre Dame's in the top 10, right? Look at this. Virginia Tech led that game 29-21 in the fourth quarter. Notre Dame got a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to tie it, and then won it on a field goal. And that was in the last 3 minutes of the game. Virginia Tech led by 8 with 3 minutes to go in the game, and they lost that game. Another game to look at for Virginia Tech was the Syracuse game. And if you go to Syracuse, once again, click on the box. Virginia Tech led this game 36-27 by 2 scores with 3 minutes to go in the game. Gave up a touchdown pass and then a 45-yard touchdown pass with 19 seconds left and lost. Those are 2 games they could easily have won. Right now, Virginia Tech could be a 6-3 team, but they lost those 2 games at home. Another reason not to let up in the second half. I like all this we got going for us motivationally because we got 11.5-point favorite. Do you know that Duke is 0-7 against the spread as an away dog? It pretty much looks like that. You see it here. I could go back and show you, but flip open your magazine, look to the away dog section, and if you can find 3 or 4 straight away dogs, which is what it is, you will see that they have lost. And then the final factor, have you been following Duke the last few years? They are the king of the red on defense over the last 4 weeks of the season. They normally start out good, then their team wears down. And look at how they do the last 4 weeks. Here they allowed 448 yards on the season. Last 4 weeks here, 432, 469. Look at all the red at the end of the season for Duke. Last 4 weeks, boom, 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 boom. A lot of red, 536 yards per game. Prior to that, they'd been playing decent, but 536 yards per game at the end of the year, minus 105 over their opponent's average. And look at this. We got all red here already for Duke heading in. If they get worse over the last 3 weeks, look out. They gave up 677 yards to Wake Forest, 636 to Pitt. They're giving up 570 yards the last 4 weeks. Perfect elixir for Virginia Tech. Nice situation. I like Virginia Tech minus 11.5 over Duke. I'm going to give you one more, then I'm going to take a quick break to save my voice. You guys don't even know the break because there's no commercials or anything, but I'm just letting you know. I'm thinking in my head that's what I'm going to do, so I thought I'd let you know as well. We got Kentucky on the road, but I like these games. I've used it many times on Phil Steele Plus. When Vanderbilt is at home against some teams, Georgia, for example, when Vanderbilt hosts Georgia, the stadium is almost all red. It's all Georgia fans. When they hosted this year Mississippi State, I looked at the crowd. It was the majority Mississippi State fans. Now, Missouri didn't have that kind of crowd edge on them. Missouri doesn't travel as well. It's a further distance. And they actually played a good game against Missouri. Remember, I used them on Phil Steele Plus, and I told you at the time they don't have their usual home field disadvantage, and they did indeed cover against Missouri. Well, guess what? I've watched Kentucky Vanderbilt games before. Kentucky will have the home field edge here, so I like that. It's hidden because the lines maker gives Vanderbilt the 3 points for the game, but it really should be priced the other way. So you get line value, and you can see that right here. The games where they've been at home, and you could go back to last year. Look at last year when they played the SEC games. Now, of course, last year there was nobody had a home field advantage, so they didn't have a home field advantage at all. They lost at home by an average of 43-14. So it's a Vandy team. You know I like to pick on them when they're at home. And how about this Kentucky? They opened up 6-0. They were number 11 in the country. Played a decent game against Georgia. Lost to Mississippi State. And last week they actually put up 612 yards on Tennessee. Had a 35-17 first down edge, but came up with a 3-point loss. They need a win. They need to turn things around. And they can easily beat Vanderbilt. They'll be a huge favorite over New Mexico State. They'll be favored over Louisville. And once again, if you want to know who's going to be favored and who's not going to be favored, go to the homepage at philsteele.com and click right here, the Vegas Power Ratings. The beautiful thing about this, we're not worried about head-to-head matchups. This tells you if Ohio State played Oregon on a neutral field, Ohio State would be a 10-point favorite. Also, there's all this kerfuffle out there this week about, oh my Lord, Michigan State is ranked below Michigan and they beat them head-to-head. Guys, did you watch the game? I mean, let's flip on that for a minute. Sorry to get off on track, but I'd like to just point out a few things. Michigan in the game against Michigan State had a 552 to 395 yard edge. They led by 16. Michigan State needed fourth down conversion, two 2-point conversions. They needed a fumble return for a touchdown by Michigan, ruled somehow overturned when there was no real video evidence to overturn it. If you watched the game that day, you thought Michigan was the better team. And Michigan, the Vegas power rating says 122, and it says Michigan State is 116. So at a neutral site this week, Michigan would be favored by 6. Vegas doesn't have any saying, Michigan State's got to be ranked above Michigan because they beat them outright. That's what the beauty of the Vegas power ratings is here. And even, look at Florida. Florida's 4-5. They're number 18 in the country. If they played a team like Michigan State, for example, on a neutral field, Florida would actually be a 1-point favorite in the game. So it's very interesting. Check out your Vegas ratings. And if you're looking at upcoming games, you could tell what the spread is in the game. Like to thank the good folks. One of the folks we use for the Vegas power ratings, Westgate Las Vegas Sportsbook at Superbook Sports. Go ahead and follow them on Twitter. And if you're ever in Vegas, go to the Westgate. They are outstanding. One of the top sports books out there. All right, but let's get back to this. And the game we're looking at is Kentucky. They're on the left. Technically, they're the visitor, but they will have the home field edge for this. And we've got Vanderbilt on the right. We're going to line up Vanderbilt. And I think I've already showed you a bunch of the reasons why I liked Kentucky here. I think their offense, which got rolling last week, 612 yards, and they've got a reason to pour it on. They've got 3 games left. They've got a rush defense over here that is allowing 5.3 yards per game on the season. And they like to run the football. Look at the green over here. They couldn't run the ball against Georgia. Mississippi State has an exceptional rush defense. You see when they're red here, it tends to be red over here. Let's take a look at last year. Red here, well, they did win that game. Red here, loss here. Red here, loss here. So when it's red here, they lose. When it's green here, win. Green here, win. They tend to win games when this is green. I got a feeling this is going to be green this week because they allow 5.3 yards per carry. They'll be able to run the football. They are 7-2 as a double-digit favorite. They're off 3 losses. And last year, let's take a look at last year's game. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. The last time, here's 2020 right here. Kentucky, Vanderbilt. No, that's this one. 2020. That's mistitled. These are mistitled. Todd's a little sloppy there, isn't he? This is 2021, Todd. Kentucky's schedule for 2020 is actually labeled 2021. So that's a little off there. Let me see this. At Vanderbilt at home. All right, we'll figure that out. I'm not sure what I have in my notes, but all right. So the last home game, I should say, Vanderbilt played Mississippi State. They were down 24-3 at the half, and they lost 45-6. So add it all up. I like Kentucky minus 21 over Vanderbilt. You've got a defense that holds opponents to 64 yards below their season average. You got a defense that allows opponents 105 yards per game above a season average. You got a Vanderbilt offense that averages 74 yards below what opponents allow. That means they only get about 270 yards here. And you've got a Kentucky offense that hit its stride last week with 612 yards, which makes me think they can cover. They're off 3 losses. They need a win. They can win their last 3 games and finish 9-3. I like Kentucky minus 21 over Vanderbilt. All right, I'm going to take a break, but I'll be right back in a matter of seconds with your next segment. To another game, and it's we're going to look at Middle Tennessee State and FIU this week. And this is a game where Middle Tennessee State's a 10-point favorite, which you may think is high because they're only 4-5 on the season, but I got a lot of good reasons to like Middle Tennessee here. First of all, this will be my home away game of the week. Middle Tennessee State at home this year beat Monmouth 50-15, upset Marshall 34-28, and beat Southern Miss 35-10. They've only had 3 home games all year. They've won their home games by an average of 40-18. I like that. Now, let's take a look at FIU on the road. They lost to Texas Tech 54-21. Lost to Central Michigan 31-27. FAU 58-21. Marshall 38-0. On the road, 45-17 minus 246 yards per game. Not a good road team. Let's take a look at a few more facts. Now, this one I got through my reading through the week. FIU's banged up. It was part of the reason that this has happened. You see all this red? You guys know the red here means that they lost the game straight up. Butch Davis says this is the most beat-up team he's ever had. They're down 25 players. He's never had a team so banged up. Meanwhile, let's take a look at Middle. So you got a banged-up team, by the way, that's clinched a losing season, playing out the string, 3 games left, including their home final next week. If they get up for any game, it'll be their home finale against North Texas. This is just another road game, and they're coming off a 47-24 loss at home last week to Old Dominion. And Old Dominion blew a couple opportunities in that game as well. I mentioned that in my write-up, but if you look at the game, let's take a look at Old Dominion. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown, intercepted, and that was, and then they also fumbled and missed a field goal. So at the end of the half, 2 turnovers and a missed field goal, or else they could have led by more. Pretty much dominated the game against FIU. It was 24-10 at the half. Could have been a lot worse. So that's one of the reasons. You've got Middle Tennessee last week was a turnover machine. Now, they lost Chase Cunningham for the season. I do like Nicholas Vitato, and he hit 24-41 for 205, but he had 5 interceptions. The team had 7 turnovers last week. That hurt them. And they're off a misleading final. They lost this game by 27 points. Excuse me. But they were only outgained by 3 yards. The turnovers set up Western Kentucky. If we take a look at that one closer, once again, I go through the whole play-by-play, but I'll just give you the cursory view up here. Western Kentucky had a 19-yard drive after a turnover. They did get an interception return for a touchdown. Western Kentucky had a 10-yard drive after a turnover, a 33-yard drive after a turnover, and they won the game big. But Middle wasn't as bad. In fact, Middle last week held a very potent Western Kentucky offense to 182 yards below their season average, a season low for Western Kentucky. That tells me they're playing pretty good defense, and they're taking on an offense that's, well, to politely say they're struggling this year. They actually have put up 402 yards per game, but in conference play, 388. But I like Middle's defense in this one. You've got a team that turned the ball over, and here's the final factor I want to look at here, and that is Middle is 1, 2, 3, 4. They are 4-5. They need a bowl game. They've got FIU this week. That could be win number 5. They got Old Dominion to be favored in that. That could be win number 6. It's a huge game for them. Whereas FIU may be playing out the string, Middle Tennessee State can still get to a bowl with wins here and against Old Dominion next week. So they got a lot of good things going for them. They're playing at a higher level. Right now, 88.6 to 76.5 the last 4 weeks. That's 12.1. Tuck in the home field edge, you're looking at 15.1. I'd give them an even bigger home field edge because I think one team's playing out the string. The other one's playing for a bowl. I'm going to take Middle Tennessee minus 10 over FIU. Before I get to the FCS and NFL, one quick note for you, and I tucked it in way over here just because I wanted to make sure only my hardcore Phil Steele Plus leaders got this special. If I put it at the top of the tape, then everybody would be able to get this special, but I just want it for you guys. And that is the Inside the Press Box Tour special. Now, College Press Box went 2-3 last week. Yes, no doubt about it. I was very disappointed. 2-3 is, I'm not happy with that. Ohio State disappointed me last week. Didn't play as well to the level. UCF did not dominate Tulane like I thought they would. Florida Atlantic led Marshall 13-7 and lost. We did have winners on East Carolina and Texas A&M, but 2-3 last week. But it's still 11-5 over the last 3 weeks. Sean, who does my NFL, I call him Mr. 101 all week long because he went 1-1 this past week. 12-6 on the year. That's pretty good for the NFL for the season. And these are specials only for you guys. And I'll just run them over quick. Here's the coupon code that you type in, Tour Deal College. Right now there's 3 full issues of College Press Box left. $60. Your price is $49. NFL, there are still 8 issues left. That's a $160 value. Your price just $99. And like I said, Sean's doing a hell of a job. 12-6 on the year. College and NFL postseason is $89. That's every bowl game. Complete breakdown of every bowl game. All 4 weeks of the NFL playoffs. That's pretty cheap for $89. If you got all these separately, it's $309. Now, right now, if you go to our store, the philsteele.com store, it has got these prices down here for the press box, and it's $189. But you guys, $149. That gets you all the way through the Super Bowl. The postseason alone is $89. You're paying $60. $60 would be the college, but then you're getting basically the NFL for free. $149, but it's only for you guys. It's called Tour Deal Gold. And if you're already not a press box member and you're not Phil Steele Plus, that includes Phil Steele Plus. You get that included in here. This $69 value included in it. So $149 gets you Phil Steele Plus for the rest of the year and press box. And Phil Steele Plus right now, if you go there and sign up for it, just $49. But that's only for you guys. It's $69 all year. Next year we're raising the price to $99. But I'll have discounts for people that had Phil Steele Plus prior to it. But if you don't sign up this year, it will be $99 next year. Tour Deal Plus gets you that, and I can't discount the FCS any lower. It's $29 right now. And just to let you know, when you get press box, you get this write-up. I do this entire write-up every week on every game. There's 62 games this week, so you get 62 full write-ups. You get my computer's forecast on the game. Here's last week. If we pop over here and take a look at how the game did. Oh, this is one of the best bets, Texas A&M. My computer said A&M would rush for 171. They got 217. Said they would pass for 230. They got 192. So slightly different, but 402 yards. They had 409 yards. Thank you, computer. I never do make a play without looking at the computer. Auburn would rush for 129. They only rushed for 73. Pass for 193. They only passed for 153, 322. A&M's defense did even better. And I said A&M's defense would do better here. See, I mentioned Leal and different things over here. But basically, the computer told me 25-18. I liked it even more. I said A&M by 14. A&M win it by 17. So it was pretty good for it. You get that kind of write-up on every single game. Even like we talked about earlier, the ULM Arkansas State game. Even games I'm not picking here for Phil Steele Plus, you get the full write-up on it. So Tulsa playing Tulane. You want to know anything about it? It's all here. My computer forecast, all 62 games. Well worth the $20. It's not just about the selections. Yeah, the selections have been doing good, but it's not just about the selections. It's about the write-up and a complete write-up on every game. So I showed you the specials. That's all I need to do. This isn't a selling tape, but I love you guys. I love the fact that you take the time to watch these every single week, and I put a lot of effort into them, and I want to give something back to you guys each and every week. All right, so let's get to the FCS games this week. Now, I got to be honest with you. I'm looking at Don Best, and I'm looking at they only have one line of FCS available right now, and it's 5 dimes. I think this number might be off, but here's the thing. Last night, Western Carolina was laying 10. I came in this morning, and they're laying 9. So there was a line move on the game. They have it posted. Western Carolina -9 over Eastern Tennessee State. I'm thinking there's something fishy with that, but if it is the line, then it is an official play. We're going to put Western Carolina over here on the right, and we're going to put Eastern Tennessee State here on the left. Now, like I said, the line did move a point this morning, so somebody adjusted it and still has Western Carolina a 9-point favorite. What we have here with Western Carolina, now if you look under forecast, you can learn all about the team. Here's the series history, and then if I wrote the team at the very end, I give you a complete write-up on it. I haven't made the playoffs since 83. Got to the FCS championship game back in that year. Kerwin Bell took over, brought in a lot of transfers. I did say I thought they would be playing better at the end of the year, but I would be surprised if they escaped the basement. Well, they are playing better at the end of the year. They beat the Citadel. They beat Wofford. They beat Furman last week. I believe that Furman, what happened in that game at the end of the game? I believe Furman got a late score. Western Carolina trailed 40-30, and Furman missed a field goal at the end of the game or else. But they did put up 538 yards. Rogan Wells is doing well. I can see why Vegas may be enamored with Western Carolina, but Eastern Tennessee State went into Vanderbilt and won. They're contending for the title here. They only have one loss all year. It was at Chattanooga and was by 5, so I find it highly unlikely they're going to lose by more than 9 points in this one. Their defense for Western Carolina is allowing opponents 70 yards above their season average. Eastern Tennessee's 5 below. I love Quay Holmes. Quay Holmes is a dude that it rushed for 1,000 yards here. They only played 6 games last year, but he rushed for 640. That's a 1,000-yard season in my mind. He's rushing for 1,000 yards again this year. Dynamic runner. Tyler Riddell has got a 12-3 ratio. They're a team that's plus 91 yards per game. They're minus 4. Not quite sure why they're a 9-point underdog in this game. I like Eastern Tennessee plus 9. Now, if you see the line on Saturday morning when it comes out and East Tennessee State's a favorite, I still like East Tennessee State. As you could tell, the average game grades has a close, but has them winning the game. But I like them plus 9. Now, if they're not plus 9, let's say they're minus 9 in this game, then I can see where Western Carolina's there. I'll give you a replacement game, and that's Presbyterian against Marist, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And once again, I am not an expert on the FCS. I am so swamped with all the awards that I do, with the FBS, that the FCS I don't follow on a weekly basis. But this brings me up to date on every team on a weekly basis. And Marist this week is playing at Presbyterian. So let's put Presbyterian on the right. And I introduced you guys to Presbyterian last week. You learned about them. I learned about them while I was doing some research. I told you they were plus 19, I believe it was, against Valparaiso. They covered, so that was nice. That was just one of the quick hitters last week. They're at home this week getting 13 from Marist. And once again, I don't even follow basketball. So you guys may be familiar with how to pronounce these names. I don't follow basketball. I rarely follow the FCS, and there would be very little time for me to follow these guys because they're not a great team. They are 4-4 this year, but if you look, their offense averaging just 268 yards per game, being outgained by 110 yards per game this season, and yet they are laying 13 points to Presbyterian. And Presbyterian's that team I told you last week. This dude, Kevin Kelly, if you look at the forecast, he's the guy that goes forward on 4th down. Now, he has been punting a little bit in the last couple of games. They still get stopped on downs, but look at the offense. 596 yards last week in a loss to Valparaiso. 596 to 426 plus 170 yards. So I was watching. I followed them last week, what they were doing, and they covered. Now they're getting 13 points at home from a team that beat Drake by 7, beat Dayton by 3. They've got one win by more than 7 points this year, and they're laying 13 on the road. They got a lot of red in here against a team here that, you know, it's a puncher's chance in every game. They may break through and actually win one. They've got a first-year head coach. You figure they're going to get better at the end of the year. They covered last week. So if Eastern Tennessee State's actually a favorite and not a dog, then use Presbyterian plus 13 over Marist this week. Now, here's a game that you're probably familiar with. It's Florida against Stanford. And a lot of people want to throw Florida in the trash can right now because they're 4-5. I got beat up something severely in the summer by Florida fans because I did not have Florida ranked in my top 25 at the start of the year. And they're 4-5 right now. And I didn't think they'd be 4-5. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't think and they're not a 4-5 team. That's their record right now. But they're, as I showed you in the Vegas power ratings, they're a better team than that. And this week they're taking on Stanford. So let's bring Stanford up here and learn a little bit about Stanford. First of all, their nickname's the Bulldogs. If you click on the forecast, you can read all about what Stanford has done. And at the end of it here, it says they were a typical turnaround team, blah, 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 title contender. So they're a decent team. So now let's see what they do here for the year. They're 1-2. They're also 4-5, but they're not playing Alabama. They're not playing Kentucky. They're not playing LSU, Georgia, South Carolina. They're playing Eastern Tennessee State, who we just talked about, Mercer, Chattanooga, VMI. They're a good team, but they're not a great team. They're minus 30 yards per game. Their average game grade, 68.5. Florida's is 112.5. Despite the fact Florida's 4-5, I love this about average game grades. Florida this year is plus 116 yards per game. They are number 9 in average game grades. And you probably wondered, like when I showed you that Vegas thing, how they've got Florida rated so high. This is why. I mean, they outgained Kentucky 382 to 224. They outgained LSU 48 to 454. Georgia, if you watch that game, the first 28 minutes, it's 3-0. Let's go click on that. 3-0 with 2:16 left in the half. And then 3 turnovers. Boom, boom, boom. 11-yard drive after an interception, 36-yard, and then a 50-yard interception return touchdown. So 3 turnovers, 1 return for a touchdown, all of a sudden 3-0 with 2 minutes and 30 seconds to go in the half. And I was rooting for Georgia. I was just like, well, my goodness, Florida is playing them dead even for 28 minutes. And in the second half, if you take away these 3 turnovers, take away that part of the game, Georgia only beat them 17-7 in that game. So they played good against the number 1 team in the country. Last week was just a game where they didn't show up. Can they afford to not show up against Stanford? I'm going to say no. How have they done? Now, the beautiful thing when you click here, this tells you how they have done against FCS teams. So they naturally have won them all, but they're 3-1 against the spread. That's good. They won 45-0, 38-0, 53-6, and 63-10, 52-3. So if you look at the last 5 against FCS, they've easily won by more than the 31.5 points they're laying here. As mentioned, Stanford's defense giving up 480 yards per game, 105 above. That's a good thing for a Florida offense that struggled last week, but has put up big green numbers most of the year. Need to have a feel-good performance. I think they will have that feel-good performance here. If we look at Florida, they're at their best when they can run the ball. They'll be able to run the ball. They need a win, and I think they get this one comfortable. The average game grades say Florida by 48.8. My computer has them winning 57-10. My computer has them with 700 yards offense here, and that's not hard to imagine. These guys are giving up 546 yards per game on the road, and Florida's a better team than they've taken on. They're better than VMI, believe it or not, Wofford, Mercer, Western Carolina, or UT Martin. So watch for Florida to maybe put up 700 yards here. Watch for Florida to have a feel-good win and get ready to win their final 3 games and turn this thing around. They can get to 7-5, win the bowl game, get to 8-5, and build some momentum for next year. I'm taking Florida minus 31.5. Now, I've given you 8 plays already, probably a little more than that if East Tennessee State turns out to be the dog in that game. But let's take a look at these NFL quick hitters. And I don't have an NFL play this week. I'm going to leave that to Sean. Let him do the inside the press box. But just a couple things I looked at while I was looking at the NFL. First of all, when you go to the homepage, and a couple things I want to point out. First of all, let's go to the FBS info. Each week we give you the strength of wins, pain of losses. Oh, also special teams. You want to know special teams? We've got the updated rankings right here. So you're looking at who's got the better offense, who's got the better defense. You want to know who's got the better special teams? Come right here. Look, Michigan, San Diego State, Virginia Tech. Oh, that's a nice thing I should have brought up in the Duke game. Virginia Tech has my number 4 special teams. Let's see where Duke is. Duke's number 70, so Virginia Tech has a nice special teams advantage as well. I should have brought that up in the Duke game. I didn't. I must not have read my notes, so I like that. That's another advantage that we have on the Virginia Tech game this week. But also in the FBS, we've got the strength of wins, pain of losses. That's right here on the front page. Just go to FBS info. Let's find that here. Strength of wins, pain of losses. Now, what this does, it gives you credit. Everybody you beat, you get credit for every FBS win they have. If they beat an FCS foe, you don't get credit for it because that's not an FBS win. Georgia's number 1. Look, Notre Dame's number 2. Wisconsin number 3. I bet you didn't think those 2 would be up there. Even Oregon is number 4 at 28. You look at Ohio State, they're just down here at number 20, number 11 at 25, and that takes you all the way through. Then here's your pain of losses. If you lose to a team, you get credit for every loss that team has. So Connecticut leads the way. Akron is 36. FIU, that team we're picking on with Middle Tennessee State this week, their teams they've lost to have lost 35 games this year. Let's find out where Middle is on this stretch. See if that comes up. Well, let's go take a look here. Middle Tennessee, their opponents that they've lost to have only lost 16 games this year. So now we come here. Let's add those 2 together. Georgia's number 1 at 38.0. Notre Dame. And even here, Notre Dame, they get 0 losses. You're scratching your head. You're like, Notre Dame lost a game. Yeah, they lost a game to Cincinnati, and Cincinnati hasn't lost a game, so they get 0 losses. UTSA, Oklahoma, Michigan gets credit for 1 loss, Michigan State. Ohio State gets credit for 1 loss. That's Oregon's loss. And so here's the teams at the top record-wise. If you're looking at Oklahoma here at 21-0, keep in mind their next 4 games are Baylor, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and then one of those 3 teams in the Big 12 title game. They will be vaulting towards the top of this if they win all 4 of those games and get credit for all those wins. Weakest team in football, Connecticut. FIU's right down there. Middle Tennessee is 5-16 for that game. North Carolina has a winning record here, 22-18 prior to last week. in the pit game. So I find that fascinating. We've got the same thing for the NFL. Click on the NFL, and here it's just, you don't worry about FBS, FCS. It's just strength of win, pain of losses. And I find this interesting. Arizona's number 1, the Rams 2, Tampa Bay 3. You look at the Green Bay matchup this week. Green Bay is 26-7, and meanwhile Seattle is 9-15. And Green Bay is only a 3.5-point favorite in this game. That's one reason to like Green Bay over Seattle this week when you look at that. Oh, and one other thing I found interesting. Excuse me, I didn't realize. Look at Buffalo. I figure Buffalo's one of the best teams in the NFL, right? The opponents they've beaten have only won 12 games. The opponents they've lost to have lost 11 games. So they're right, actually middle of the pack. So that surprised me a little bit. I just thought I'd bring that up. Now let's go back to the NFL info and look at the opponent averages. Seattle's dead last. They are minus 52 yards per game versus opponent average on offense, minus 53 on defense. That's minus 103. Green Bay's not huge. They're here in the middle of the pack. But once again, they're laying 3.5. Another one I want to look at is the New Orleans and Tennessee game. And remember last week, I brought up the injury system. Tennessee had the injury system going for it last week because they lost their star running back, and that is Derrick Henry. And they only rushed for 69 yards, but the team rallied around, and the team beat the LA Rams. Now, it's interesting that they were a dog to Buffalo and won. They were a dog to Kansas City and won, a dog to Indianapolis and won, and a dog to the Rams and won. That's unusual to have 4 straight underdog wins and they'll be favored. Plus, in the injury system, what it generally says is if that player doesn't return, the second week you can play against that team because now they're not in that A game category where everybody's rallying around it. And now the effects of it, and as you see here, Derrick Henry being out, will happen. And so the Saints might be worth a look this week. The Saints are 7-1 against the spread. It doesn't apply to Green Bay this week because Rodgers probably coming back. If Rodgers comes back, they're not the play against team anymore. And so last week, if you look at Tennessee, only 194 yards to 347. They won the game. That's a misleading final. And teams off of 4 upset wins that are now favored. I didn't do the research on this. The Playbook newsletter did, but it's only happened 7 times this millennium. It's 21 years, and they've gone 1-5-1 against the spread. So quick hitters would be Green Bay over Seattle, New Orleans over Tennessee. Those are just quick hitters. I'll leave the selections, though, to Sean, who's 12-6, and he'll have my press box selections up there for you. So those are your quick hitters. That's your FCS we talked about. Remember, the NFL, you have got individual, you're a fantasy football player, you got your individual player stats on every team. You can go back and check out you can get your individual player stats from 2017 if you want on every single team. It's all there. I want to thank you once again for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour. I hope you saw those specials we tucked away in the inside of the tour, so only you guys get them. And I'll be back with you next week. It's on to doing some awards and then, of course, watching all those games this weekend. I hope you have a great weekend, and thanks for taking the Phil Steele Plus tour.